Welcome to our TV network, your ultimate destination for all things exciting and essential. From mouth-watering food to the latest in fashion, health, education, music, movies, and news, plus thrilling sports and breathtaking travel, our TV network brings it all to you. Tune in today and experience the best of every world, all in one place, RTV.network.
Network. Our theme today is Crossing Borders, Legal Keys for Caribbean Trade Success. As we dive into the opportunities and challenges of Caribbean trade, the recent U.S. elections results add a new layer to the conversation. The potential shift in U.S. trade policy under a Trump administration. Today, we'll explore the essential legal keys, regulatory compliance insights that can help Caribbean businesses navigate these changing waters, seize opportunities that will enable Caribbean trade for growth across borders. It's all coming up here on Connect Caribbean Report with my co-hosts, Ambassador Dr. Andrea Thomas of Cleon Group, John Clendenin of the IC Group, Chris Principe, publisher of Financial IT, our guest contributor, manufacturer of spices, Peter Winston, owner of WE Flavors, based in the island of Dominica. He'll be joining Ambassador Thomas in Connect Caribbean World, together with my guests later on in the spotlight, Andrea Hubert Esquire, International Trade and Customs Attorney and Policy Advisor and founder of Developed Trade Law, LLC, joining me in the spotlight. I'm Jennifer Highland, your co-host here on Connect Caribbean Report, where we are bridging the islands, uniting communities, and unlocking new possibilities for the entire region. So stay tuned as we dive into current affairs, the stories and innovations that are shaping the Caribbean's bright future. This is your front row seat to the next wave of regional transformation we're covering here on Connect Caribbean Report. We'll be right back with Ambassador Thomas and his guest on Connect Caribbean World right after these messages.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks surged. The dollar posted its biggest gain against major currencies since 2020, and the Bitcoin rallied to a new record with Donald Trump's presidential victory. Investors and market watchers reacted positively to election results, citing potential tax cuts and deregulation as drivers of economic growth and profits. Honda Motor turns in second quarter results that fell short of analyst estimates, and its shares fell, but the company is still optimistic. The Japanese car maker raised its full-year guidance and is now forecasting sales of more than $136 billion for the fiscal year ending in 2025. Walmart is said to be testing technology in its stores that would let people open security locks for products from their cell phones. Sources tell Bloomberg the new technology is being used in a few hundred Walmart stores and allows employees to unlock cases without manually using keys and could give those unlocking privileges to Walmart Plus loyalty members. Kimberly Adams, Bloomberg Radio. This is a Bloomberg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Connect Caribbean Report. And today, on our section, Connect Caribbean World, I have with me Peter Winston. And Peter leads a company in Dominica that actually creates amazing health products. And in our business model and our business plan for Connect Caribbean Ferry Service, e-commerce and cargo, it's very clear to us that if we cannot create the infrastructure for businessmen like Peter to succeed, then we would have failed in our business model. And so that's why we have you here. And so I want you to introduce yourself and tell us about your business.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. First, good afternoon to your listeners, your viewers right around the region, wherever your broadcast is being heard at this time. I'm Peter Winston. I represent We Flavors, WE Flavors, that is. We do agro processing. We pride ourselves in producing some of our local herbs and spices we have on the island. We also do gluten-free flours, oils as well. So I'm happy to be here, trying a way forward, trying to see where we could, explore the hurdles we have in terms of our products reaching the region and the world by extension. So I'm happy to be here with you.
Okay, now I am gluten free, and so tell me some of the gluten free flours that you do, because you have quite an extensive range, and I believe there's tremendous value in those being distributed across the region, but also into U.S. markets by going into the U.S. Virgin Islands. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. At this moment, we have pumpkins, we have cassava, sweet cassava that is, banana, breadfruit, dashing, sweet potato, tanias,
All of these are flowers. Pumpkin
plantain.
flower. Wow.
Yep, we do. And where there's a local yam we call kush kush. A lot of the older folks love this. It kind of melts when it gets to your tongue. We try to do a bit of that as well. So we pretty much get in there. And beetroot. Beetroot is one of those that we're exploring to ensure that we have fully available on a wider scale.
I see. Okay, very good. Now let's talk about trade. Now, what are the challenges that you face when you seek to, say, export into the US market, or in terms of you exporting your product to the rest of the region? Because your market in Dominica is very small. What's your population?
We're basically 70,000 persons on island.
That's
And, we're thriving economies. So we definitely need to collaborate and be able to reach the wider world to ensure the success of any business right now.
Okay, so what are the challenges that you face, or what are the things that you believe can help you in terms of creating the infrastructure for your products to, say, go into the US markets, go across the Caribbean? What are the type of things that you, as a small business owner with a very innovative list of products, would like to see?
Well, for one, we have issues with the shipping rates. The shipping rates are sometimes considered as being ridiculous, but we have to work with it. So, give and take, you do a shipment and basically comes out with nothing. So I am hoping that with the introduction of e-commerce, and we could explore this to make it way easier to have our products being at least, on a platform where we can basically relax. All we have to do is apply, and you do the work for us, which is so good.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's what we want to do. Okay, now tell me, do you use air couriers, or what type of shipments do you use? Is it maritime shipments or air shipments that you use to move some of your products around?
We use air shipment, which the costs are very high, The maritime is not that reliable that you could, based on the time of year, especially within the Caribbean, you have this hurricane season, so it may be very challenging to have major shipments during those times, and of course being able to have reliable services at that time for sure.
Okay. And one more question for you. Now, have you shipped to the US before? Have you had that experience? And if you've had, what has been your experience in terms of penetrating the US market?
Definitely, we have shipped to the US, but some of the regulations up there may limit our ability to ship large quantities. So based on that, you have to go the easy way of doing small shipments and go around the hurdles, that is. But for sure, if there's another means of ensuring a smooth sailing where the products get into the US market without that much regulations or all of that, then it's way better for us.
Okay, that's very good. Well, this creates the opportunity that Connect Caribbean brings, in which for an entrepreneur, like yourself, with certainly very innovative products for a market segment that's $1 billion industry. Example, I am gluten free, and let me tell you, I would jump at your products. And you don't have a lot of good quality varieties in, say, Barbados, but in most places as well. And so that's very good. Now, what we can do is that a service like we're proposing will give you a infrastructure that can take your product all around the region and introduce you to a market that would reach over 20 million people within 2 years, and then give you access into the US market as well. And so that's really exactly what we're working on. Well, it's been great having you, and we will definitely be in touch as you will be definitely one of the first on our e-commerce platform.
Absolutely. And I'm hoping that more persons, agro-processors, and small business owners within the region will capitalize on this opportunity, because I can foresee, and I'm already excited that there's going to be an area where I doesn't have to go through all of this, and I really appreciate this idea of you guys coming on board and trying to make life easier for us. So I definitely appreciate what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Okay, over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Thomas. There with this guest, Mr. Peter Winston, founder of WE Flavors out of Dominique, and certainly he's raised some issues that we are going to tackle in the other segments of the program in terms of regulatory framework to access the US market. But that's coming up in the additional programs, and we're eager to talk more about those matters with our guests and our contributor, John McKinnon and Chris Principe, coming up next in Connect Caribbean Report. We're looking forward to hearing their points in connecting the dots. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
St. Kitts and Nevis is shifting away from its heavy reliance of its Citizenship by Investment program, which has long been a key revenue source for the nation. Prime Minister Dr. Terrence Drew recently introduced the Sustainable Island State Agenda, a new development strategy aimed at diversifying the economy and reducing dependence on CBI funds. Dr. Drew highlighted that while CBI contributed to over $2.5 billion from 2019 to 2023, its revenue is inconsistent and under pressure from international entities such as the United Kingdom and the European Union, who are reevaluating the visa-free privileges tied to the country's passport. To promote lasting economic growth, the government will use existing CBI funds to support permanent job creation and local opportunities. The Sustainable Island State Agenda, which spans the next 15 years, is structured around the sustainable economic expansion and diversification pillars. Over the coming years, the agenda is expected to drive significant growth in sectors like construction, tourism, agriculture, and sustainability. Among the new projects are a new Bastiere High School funded by CBI, the JNF Climate Smart General Hospital supported by Taiwan, a desalination plant, and an expanded power plant funded by Saudi Arabia. Dr. Drew emphasized the importance of this shift and urged citizens to embrace the plan as a pathway towards a more resilient economy.
With a Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm John Tucker. An expansion of bankruptcy eligibility rules is moving toward a potential revival through a Senate proposal that would bring back a more lenient standard for Chapter 11 relief designed for small businesses. The language would restore higher debt limits and allow more businesses to take advantage of Subchapter 5, a special section under Chapter 11 of the Bankruptcy Code that Congress created in 2019. If the previously unreported amendment becomes law, companies with up to $7.5 million in debt could file Subchapter 5. Compared to the current limit of about $3 million, the potential expansion would allow more businesses to use Subchapter 5, which bankruptcy lawyers, judges, and professors have said allows companies to restructure more cheaply and quickly than traditional Chapter 11s. The expiration of the higher debt limit meant businesses that would have been previously eligible have been unable to since June. And that's the Bloomberg Small.
Good afternoon to our viewing audience and listeners, and welcome to Connecting the Dots as we explore this week's topic of crossing borders and legal keys for Caribbean trade success. So I'm here with my partner and co-host, Chris Principe, and today we'll be discussing some of the specific legal issues and keys that resulted from our study of the topic, and also based on the conversation that was just held with the Ambassador Thomas and Peter Winston from Dominica. So the primary things that we'll talk about in this segment will be the customs regulations and tariffs, intellectual property protection, what we're trying to do in understanding and optimizing the trade agreements with CARICOM and the World Trade Organization. We'll look at some of the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, export controls, issues like anti-money laundering and counterterrorism financing, which are so crucial to this region that we consider now America's third border. So issues such as data protection and privacy, labor laws and worker rights, environmental regulations, and types of dispute regulation resolution mechanisms that we use within the Caribbean diaspora are the things that we'd like to address in Connecting the Dots. So I'd like right now to turn it over to Chris Principe, who is well-versed in the financial aspects of these legal issues, and he'll give his comment. Over.
Great, John. Thank you very much. I think a lot of the important things that you just brought up need to be discussed, but I think with the election being finished yesterday in the U.S., and I'd like to talk just a little bit about what expectations we might have from President-elect Trump's administration going forward that would directly affect some of these issues.
Sure.
So I believe that, there'll be a continuing focus on protection as he had in his first administration. But I don't see that as something that's going to be detrimental, particularly to the Caribbean, because both quotas and tariffs can be applied country-specific, product-specific even. And I believe that the target will be other countries that we have some inequities with. China comes to mind right away. But I think when it comes to the Caribbean, we won't see those kind of changes in the tariffs or the quota situation. In fact, I believe that we'll see some greater cooperation. I think the major policy organizations inside the U.S. government will see a change in leadership across the board, and that those organizations then will be much more focused on improving trade generally. Along with that, I think we're going to see less focus on regulation, both in the global trade arena as well as in the financial arena. I think it'll be a little bit easier for both financial institutions and the fintech companies to be able to continue to innovate and make progress. And I think that these things in themselves will be very, very beneficial to the Caribbean region. Thanks, John.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think those are the salient issues. And of course, the elephant in the room is the presidential election that concluded yesterday and in the wee hours of the morning. And I think in general, people could be concerned because of the protectionist policies and trade barriers, as you mentioned, and could hurt economic growth. But I think that's also the opportunity, because as you said, it's specific to countries. And I think when we look at some of these things that people had worried about, retaliatory measures in the Caribbean and harm trade relations, I think that the U.S. already has several really good free trade agreements, including Chile, Colombia, Peru, which could be reevaluated under a new administration. But I think that the investment in growth, when we look at the Caribbean as an opportunity, I think that we have, with our structure, particularly with the Connect Caribbean and these issues, the MOU that was signed by Governor Bryant to let the private entities and the private sector really drive the economic growth as a strategy. I think all of these things that we do would make it easier for that administration. I think the hub in the Caribbean that we have with the U.S. Virgin Islands is going to be significant. Representative Stacey Plaskett, our delegate, was reelected in an overwhelming landslide. And I think that her role is going to be crucial, because as she crosses the aisle now, and we look at having not just the presidential power, but also in the Senate and in the House, and with the majority of state governors. Most of the other territories are with Republican rule. I think that Delegate Plaskett has the opportunity to focus on what we have done as a territory in the Caribbean and let that be a major focus.
Yeah, John, I would certainly agree with a lot of that. Having some of our newly elected or re-elected officials is going to be a big help, because they intimately understand the issues and the concerns and have already been well engaged in the fight in Washington to get these things recognized and improved. So I also think with the trade agreements, we have a number of agreements in our southern hemisphere that have produced some good results. I would personally like to see at some point that maybe we get a revision on the CARICOM agreement. And I also think that, as you well stated earlier, as the third border, there is a definitive interest from the U.S. in developing and helping the Caribbean area in general to be sustainable and to grow.
Yeah. So, as for our listeners, when Chris is talking about the key trade agreements, we have the Caribbean Basin Trade Agreement, Trade Partnership Act, the CBTPA. It provides benefit to Caribbean Basin countries, including duty-free treatment of certain goods. We have the Caribbean Basin Economic Recovery Act, CBERA, established by the Caribbean Basin Initiative, the CBI, and it offers trade preferences to beneficial countries. And we should remember that President Biden actually led the CBI initiative for President Obama several years ago. And so there's the opportunity for, as I mentioned, Delegate Plaskett to actually bridge and cross the aisle and help with these things. There's also the Dominican Republic, Central America, United States Free Trade Agreement, implemented in 2006, and the Haitian Hemispheric Opportunity through Partnership and Encouragement Act. So in general, Chris, as we look at this, we have the opportunity for regional strategies to be developed for harmonization of the laws and regulations, streamlined customs procedures, regional trade agreements, investment promotion and protection, and intellectual property protection, all of which are the focus of this broadcast and program. Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you so much, John and Chris, broaching the issue relative to trade and regulatory compliance, and speaking there a little bit about the trade agreements that are already in place. But coming up in the spotlight, my special guest, Andrea Ewert, Esquire. She's an international trade and customs attorney and policy advisor. She's the founder of Develop Trade Law based in Washington, D.C. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages with Connecting the Dots.
This is the Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. Growing share of people are renting. The number of households of renters climbed 2.7% last quarter from a year ago. That's just about the highest level ever, 45.6 million households to be exact, according to real estate brokerage Redfin, at rate of growth 3 times faster than the just about 0.1% increase in homeowner households. And San Jose, Los Angeles, and San Diego have the highest share of renter households in the nation. Cape Coral, Florida, and Charleston and Columbia, South Carolina have the lowest. Redfin says the share of renters is increasing much faster than the share of homeowners because the cost of buying is rising way faster than the cost of renting. The median asking rent up about 0.6% year on year in September, but rents have been pretty much flat for the past 2 years. Home prices climbed 6% year over year in September. They've grown more than 10% in the past 2 years. And that's the Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Reimagine a world where the Caribbean is seamlessly connected, where our people, our cultures, and our economies move freely across the islands. This is Connect Caribbean, more than a ferry service. It's the heartbeat of a new era, an era where economic opportunities expand, where trade flows freely across our seas, and cultural exchange flourishes. We are linking businesses, empowering communities, and reigniting the hope for a truly integrated Caribbean. Together, we're shaping a brighter, more unified future for the Caribbean. Connect Caribbean, connecting our islands, our people, our future. Welcome back to Connect Caribbean Report. In the spotlight, we just heard from Chris and John, but we are in the spotlight, and in the spotlight is where we chat with local, regional, and international guests to talk about relevant topics and gain insight from their experience in the Caribbean. Well, today my guest is Andrea Ewert, Esquire. She is the CEO of Develop Trade Law, LLC, an international trade legal and consulting firm which works with businesses, governments, and individuals to facilitate the successful movement of goods and services across the national borders. She has counseled and represented several clients on U.S. customs regulations, including preferential tariff programs, U.S. export control laws, U.S. trade sanctions, and other related legislation. Andrea is admitted to the Washington, D.C., Maryland, and the Florida bars and the U.S. Supreme Court bar. She received her JD from the University of Miami School of Law, which she attended as a Harvey Reed Scholar. She earned her MA in International Studies from the University of Miami, among other degrees. She writes articles for and speaks before businesses, associations, and other venues. Her Developed Trade Law blog addresses trade policy and compliance issues of particular relevance to developing countries and to small businesses. She is the co-author of the textbook, International Business, Doing Business Without Borders, Kendall Hunt Publishers. And Andrea is also the president of Caribbean Women in Trade. Welcome, Andrea, to Connect Caribbean Report in the Spotlight. It's great to have you join us.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. And I know that you're dealing with a storm there in Jamaica where you travel to, but I hope everything is going well there for you. But let's jump right in. And I want to touch very quickly in light of the outcome of the U.S. elections. And I'd like to reframe some of the questions I prepared to get your perspective on the potential policy changes or shifts in the trade dynamics, tariffs, or market access that could impact Caribbean businesses. But before we go there, we have businesses that do not fully understand the full gamut of compliance and regulatory issues in the context of trade expansion within the region. So let's start there quickly before I pivot to the U.S. elections outcome and the potential trade dynamics that can impact the Caribbean. So my first question for you are, what are the top compliance and regulatory issues Caribbean businesses should prioritize as they expand their trade within the region?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Jennifer. So what businesses should care about is market access. That's the purpose of trade agreements. And in the context of intra-regional trade, we are talking about the CARICOM single market. So for businesses, this means becoming familiar with the entry requirements for their products or for their services. Products that qualify for duty-free origin you begin by confirming that you have the tariff rate that will apply. So you begin with classifying the product to ensure that, first of all, you know what tariff rate will apply and will it be eligible for the preferential access on the CARICOM single market. And of course, the ability to enter your product into a market duty-free or at a tariff rate that's lower than your competitors is an important competitive advantage. So the first advice I always give to clients, to companies, is as you are seeking to expand your markets, look for preferred opportunities to enter your products on a preferential basis. And of course, regional-wide, the CARICOM single market regime provides that.
Okay.
Now, without a product enters duty-free, it's also essential to be aware of applicable sanitary, phytosanitary standards and labeling requirements. So it's important to ensure that there is a proper documentation to show that the product was tested and certified at the standards labs. And I know not all countries have labs at the national level. And whether or not they have that, it can be an expensive undertaking. But it's even more expensive to have your product show up at the port of entry and then be either turned away, delayed, or perhaps possibly destroyed.
Okay. All right. Well, I can have you on this program as an international trade law and not ask you question relative to the U.S. elections outcome. So given Trump's previous stance on trade agreements and foreign policy, then what specific shifts might Caribbean businesses expect in their trade relations with the U.S.?
All right. Well, first, let me clarify something that was said by the previous guests. And I find myself having to do this quite often. There is actually no existing trade agreement between the US and the Caribbean or CARICOM countries. What we have in place with the existing US CARICOM trade regime is governed by legislation, and all of those legislations, SABERA, CBTPA, etc., that were listed by the previous speaker, those are all actually all legislation. Now, I highlighted two things. One is that it means that there is very strong bipartisan support for US CARICOM trade. So it means it exists with, of course, the support of the executive branch, but also with the very, very strong support of Congress, which remains an important player. And so I don't expect a lot of change, which could be both a plus and a minus, because in the absence of a trade agreement, there are still a number of challenges that our products and service providers face in entering the US market. And it would be great to have those addressed by some kind of trade agreement, but I don't know that it will be on the cards in the short term.
Okay, so I want to get into quick questions as this segment is wrapping up. What advice would you give to Caribbean businesses that rely on exports to the US in preparing for possible regulatory changes or trade restrictions?
I don't think there are going to be any. I mean, I think that the important thing is to continue to focus on getting the CBI, which is the compilation name given to all of the various programs that have been created by legislation that give market access, access into the US market.
Yeah, I think the reason why I raised that is because it's the, America First policies, and Caribbean countries might be thinking that they need to adapt to protect their economic interests. So that's the reason why I raised that. But you're saying you don't see much cause for concern there. So I know the time is limited, but let me get this quick last question in. And relative to the same US outcome and the World Trade Organizations, do you foresee any particular policy changes coming out of the US elections and what's currently pretends with the WTO? And then obviously, as you know, it trickles back down to the Caribbean nations. So I just wanted to get your quick perspective on that one.
That one is not a quick answer at all. I mean, the relations between the US and the WTO have been tense under both Democrats and Republican administration, under President Obama, under the former President Bush administration, remains so under President Biden, although I think there is a greater embrace of multilateralism and an interest in resolving some of the existing issues, most notably the absence of an appellate body court, which, appellate body for to settle disputes. So I just expect those tensions will actually escalate under the WTO.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Andrea, for your insightful contribution. And I hope that we can have you back on this program to do a little bit more deep dive. But that's all the time we have for this segment in the Spotlight. But we'll be right back after these messages with Connected Voices right here on Connect Caribbean Report.
Thank you.
Nigeria has launched a significant $1.8 billion investment in Grenada's hydrocarbon resources, partnering with the Global Petroleum Group through its own OceanGate Oil and Gas Engineering. This partnership aims to capitalize on Grenada's unexplored hydrocarbon potential, possibly leading to the Caribbean's first commercial oil and gas production. Nigeria's interest in Grenada is part of its broad strategy to diversify its refined products market. The venture could eventually expand to an $8 billion investment, depending on exploration outcomes and production feasibility. This initiative aligns with Nigeria's aim to expand its influence in international energy markets while fostering economic ties with Caribbean nations. The project also offers Grenada a promising economic boost through infrastructure investment and job creation. The 38-year agreement with the Grenadian government allows for shared production in an offshore area about 7,000 square kilometers, promoting growth in Grenada's energy sector. Previous efforts by GPG, especially around the Nutmeg 2 well, hint at untapped reserves that OceanGate's involvement could further uncover and commercialize. With the regional competition from established players like Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada's successful venture could inspire other Caribbean islands to explore their own energy resources, contributing to energy independence and reduce imports. For Nigeria, this partnership holds both economic and geopolitical value as it extends its energy influence beyond Africa.
Welcome back to Connect Caribbean Report in the segment Connected Voices. And joining us is the full team here on Connect Caribbean Report. And we have with us, joining us, we have John Clendenin, Ambassador Dr. Andre Thomas, Chris Principe. Andrew is still here with us. Maybe she'll chime in, but we want to welcome Mr. Hubert Lorenzo Frederick. He just won his seat. Congratulations to you, Senator. And he is from the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix District Senator elected, and he's from the Democrat side. So I'm going to open the floor, and perhaps John and Ambassador can raise a couple questions for the Senator, and we'll see if we have enough time for contribution from our other guests. So over to you, Ambassador Thomas and John. You can decide who's going to pose the first question to
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer, and I'd like to welcome my friend and longtime associate, Senator Frederick. Both Chris Principe and I have known the senator for a long time, and it is with great admiration and pleasure that to see how he has persevered. It's not his first run, and he's knocked out several incumbent people from that race, and it's a testimony. But Senator, I know you have a background in trade and what you're doing, and during our report, when we're looking at the Caribbean diaspora and what we're doing in connecting the Caribbean in this Voices, and we talked a little bit about the your election and what happens with the presidential and Senate elections and possible roles that Delegate Plaskett could have. I think, just to orient your comments, the renegotiation or reevaluation of trade agreements are one of the things that we're concerned about. The changes, possible changes, tariff rates and trade preferences, shifts possibly in the U.S. trade policy affecting all of the Caribbean nations, potential dispute in compliance with this difference between legislation and agreements. And it all comes under the color of, I'm sure you're aware, the MOU that our Governor Albert Bryant Jr. signed just a few weeks ago, which enables us now as a private sector to look at connecting all of these voices. So I'll ask the Ambassador, Thomas, do you have anything to add as we look forward to hearing remarks from Senator Frederick?
I think your question covers all the things I really wanted to ask. So I'm looking forward to your answer. But I just want to congratulate you now, Senator, on your elections. And I look forward, as the Chairman and CEO of Playing Group Connect Caribbean, to work with you.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys having me on the show. I'm honored to be here. I know John and Chris. I've known them for a while now, and it's good that I'm on the show. I'm excited. I also know Anthony Weeks, a dear friend of mine. I understand what we've been trying to work on, and I'm very interested in pushing this initiative forward. There's definitely an opportunity for the U.S. Virgin Islands to connect more with our Caribbean brothers and sisters, and whatever it is that we need to do to move it forward, you could count on my support in making sure these initiatives move forward.
Yes, thank you, Senator. Chris, you have something to, I know you want to welcome Senator Frederick as well.
Yes, certainly. Big congratulations. It's been in process, I know, for a while. We've talked and even joked about it to some extent, but you've got quite a challenge now in front of you. And I know your beliefs on global trade and how important it is to the region. So what's your first steps in trying to meet this challenge?
Well, one of the things, a little bit about my background, I've done international banking for almost 25 years. So I'm not new to the space of trade and global commerce. But in the Virgin Islands specifically, we're not really active players in that market. So this is like a very new area for us to develop within the framework of the United States rules. So we've got an opportunity with this MOU to push that boundary and develop some trade opportunities. And we're going to take it a little slow because clearly we don't want to step on anyone's toes. But I think that with the governor's full support and with me now pushing the legislative support on this initiative, I think you'll be able to see some favorable outcomes.
Great, and thank you. And one of the things, Senator, I think I'd like to address with Attorney Ewert, as she mentioned, the difference between the legislation and actual agreements. And one of the things I'd like to highlight is that in the Virgin Islands, we have the opportunity, because by law, it's the Virgin Islands legislature that sets the agreements that, because we're in two separate customs jurisdictions. We have the U.S. Customs, which operates under ACE, which is the Automated Customs Environment, and ours is independent. And in working with our customs, those trades, tariffs, how we do duties are all controlled by our legislature. So I look forward to you having that voice in the legislature and looking at how we can do that. But I would turn that over to Attorney Ewert, that says if we have that capability in the legislature to define our trade, and we're going to be one of the hubs in CARICOM, what kinds of suggestions would you have for our newly elected senator to move from legislation to agreements?
One of the things that I would, I think the region bills itself as being driven by services trade. And, that's movement of people, movement of skills, etc. And whereas I don't think that there is a good opportunity for a full-fledged free trade agreement between the US and the Caribbean, I think there certainly is the opportunity to explore one that's focused on services trade, the opportunity to address a number of the regulatory barriers that impose, say, additional licensing requirements on professionals who are already skilled, licensed, practicing their trade for a very long time. And yet, in order to, let's say, even pay a quick visit to provide some services in the US, they would have to get relicensed, or they're being, excluded altogether. So I would suggest that as one of the areas, if you're looking at talking about negotiating a trade agreement. I do want to say, even outside of the context of a trade agreement, there are definitely opportunities to address some of the existing barriers that limit the entry of goods into the US market. So those are the things I would highlight.
Thank you. And when we talked with Mr. Winston earlier on Dominica and what happens with his particular products, I think those are the challenges that we face. The lack of infrastructure that as the individual countries have, bureaucratic delays, limited resources, and that if we can look at focusing particularly in the hub that the U.S. Virgin Islands has, if we can consolidate shipments, if we can ship things from the U.S. Virgin Islands to the mainland U.S. without the duties and tariffs, then it provides an opportunity not just with the Caribbean region, but with our hub and spoke, that if we use this private sector initiative to consolidate those shipments, having warehousing and things like that, that would enable that. And Mr. Winston, you talked about the opportunity to piggyback on the Concarib opportunity. Would you like to add something with your voice in this last segment? Over.
Absolutely. I want to say congratulations to the senator as well. And
thank you.
In this field, I'm expecting that your administration could look into the possibilities of making things easier. That a lot more of the Caribbean products could be on your shelves, and a little bit more free flow. So we're looking forward to doing that level of trade with you. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Winston.
Yes, if I might add, I definitely agree. I mean, every Caribbean country does not need to have a major port. And I definitely support that idea of, the hub and spokes that can be then supported by smaller shipments, whether it's by flight or by cargo. So I concur with that. Yes.
Good. Thank you, Attorney Ewert. And so I'd like to turn it back now to Ambassador Thomas, because I think that this whole notion of how we're connecting the Caribbean, because we have the opportunity together. What we do is important. What we do makes a difference. And if we can take advantage of the best practices of the transparency in regulations, consulting individually with our stakeholders, such as Mr. Winston and in the different countries, and have an efficient way of dispute resolution and this capacity building of one single environment for a single economy, I think we can harmonize this opportunity with international standards. So at this point, back to you, Ambassador Thomas.
Okay, thank you so much, John, and also thank you for the issues that you highlighted. In really summarizing what I've heard, it's very clear to me that there is a significant opportunity that's been created by the MOU, and now with Senator Frederick taking his role within the Senate to create a legislative environment along with our maritime supply chain infrastructure to make the trade of goods U.S. to Caribbean, Caribbean to U.S., and take it to another dimension, a higher dimension. I believe we can definitely increase this and create a really win-win scenario, actually, for the region. And so I'm really glad that this is the case.
Well, thank you, everyone, for your contribution to this segment. I want to thank Senator Frederick for joining us. I'm sure that your plate is going to be quite full, and so I want to really thank you for coming on and spending a few minutes with us here on Connect Caribbean Report. Thank you, John Clendenin of the IC Group, Vice Principal of Financial IT. Thank you, Peter Winston from Dominica. He is the Managing Director of the Flavors. Thank you so much for joining us. And my guest, Andrea M. Ewert, Esquire from Developed Trade Law. I think I mentioned Ambassador Thomas. He's the Chairman and the CEO of Connect Caribbean, and he's trying to connect the whole Caribbean and make these opportunities available for businesses to do trade across the Caribbean. So we want to thank you for joining us on today's program, and we're really grateful to be that you've taken the full hour here with us, and we're looking forward to coming back next week, same time, 1:30 EST, and we're looking forward to more exciting times and conversations as we look to build this connected Caribbean. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, here on Connect Caribbean Report. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.